Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto.
And
This
Dennis
would
from
have been
Black Tie
where
Kitchen.
this is where you jump in. We're gonna try that one again. Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto,
And Dennis from Black Tie Kitchen.
and I don't know that we have a name for this podcast because ants, I guess.
I do like the shirt. I just noticed it.
Oh yeah, see, I wore this like the last time you and I did a podcast or co-podcast or interview or whatever we're gonna call this, which was probably a year or more ago. It
Yeah, because
was
everybody had the really crazy beard.
yeah, it was not all that long after you and I kind of got to know one another as sort of internet friends and decided, hey, as long as we're talking, as long as we're doing a Zoom call, let's just record it. So this one, I think, may feel a bit like a back and forth interview or a conversation, you know, um, just because we know each other, but we don't know each other that well. So
This is
I
gonna be
hope
like
you
the
brought a
dating
list of
game.
questions to ask, things you're dying to know.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to start. Um, what is going on right now with Black Tie Kitchen? Because there was a period 7, 8 months ago, you kind of went dark for a while, and then you came back, and you were gracious enough to let me do a cameo in your comeback video. And since then, there's been a palpable change in the channel. There's been a little less of the cinematic stuff that you're well known for, and even it seems a little bit of a shift away from keto. So what's going on?
Yeah, so it was a culmination of a lot of things happening at once. I kind of had to take some time off, just some personal things, and I was starting to get burnt out. Um, the constant cinematography, and because that's the thing too, is that YouTube is first and foremost about entertainment. And I think a lot of people ignore that. When you get those comments of, "Hey, just give me the facts," like, well, then go to the library. A good example is I have like to remove the deck on my dad's lawnmower. They have a video, and I've watched that video 5 times. I couldn't tell you who filmed it, what their name is, what the channel is, none of that stuff, because it wasn't entertaining. It was just straight hard facts. So once we know that part of that is being entertaining, and the approach that I have to YouTube of being very cinematographic, trying to tell a story with each thing. In addition to coming up with unique recipes,
Hmm.
it was too much at that point. I was doing too many things, um, so I had to take a break from that. And then coming back, uh, I was still doing it, but then I had this whole culmination of moving, a new job, um, selling my house, like all sorts of things, like everything at once. It's like I don't have the bandwidth at this point to really focus and give it uh, my all. And at the same time, my diet really kind of shifted. Looking at my blood work, I keto just wasn't agreeing with my blood work and how I felt and stuff. And people say like, "Well, you didn't do it right." It's like I trust me, I did it strict keto. I did lazy. All the different words that you can throw under the umbrella. I've tried. I've tried pretty much every diet out there except vegan. Um, and it wasn't working. So I switched to my old school, tried and true that always works for me is high protein, uh, low carb, and just limit your calories. Then I was running and all that stuff. And in that, like, I really shifted my diet. And with that, I couldn't stay strict keto recipes and stuff on the channel. So I had to kind of pivot. But at the time that I was pivoting, my current job, I'm working like 10, 12 hours a day. So the time constraint there, and also with the moving and all those other things, I just haven't had the time to kind of focus on putting out content and making good recipes. I mean, I have a backlog full of stuff. I have so many recipes and things I want to share, but trying to come up with a good way that's both entertaining and informative is just I don't have the time at the moment. Like I really I can't wait to get back to it. Um, and I hope my new kitchen is good enough for it. I did some sample test shots, and I'm a little concerned because I mean the kitchen I have now I basically remodeled with the intent of having a cooking show. So it was like I need wide open space, I need big counters, I need places for lights type of thing. Whereas this kitchen now it's much smaller, but we'll have to make do. But I do have a lot of ideas and plans going back to things, but yeah, it just takes time, and a lot of it too is, as you know, it's not even so much the editing and stuff; it's the all the other stuff that comes around it, the creating blog posts, descriptions, photos, thumbnails, all that stuff. Um, but even
Yeah,
in that time, and even in
there's
that
a
time, I
lot
have
of administrative work that goes into it that I don't think people take into account.
yeah, and even that I
It's
have. I
just
mean, I
not
have
fun.
yeah, and I have 2 videos that I filmed that I just as I'm editing them, I was so bored out of my mind. I was like, this isn't entertaining. Like if I don't find it entertaining within the first 5 minutes that I'm making this, like who's gonna find this entertaining? Regardless of how good the content is, because nobody will get to it. So I scrapped those videos. I mean, I had one where I made 3 different types of protein shakes, which are delicious, and I need to refilm, but it wasn't entertaining. And there's nothing worse than when you're editing something. I know you've been through this. It's like this video sucks. And then you have this desire of like always being better. You're trying to put out something that's good, and something like that, you're just like, man, it's like, do I put it out there and just let this you know play a course, or just suck it up and not do it? Um,
So
yeah,
you
that's a lot
touched
more
on
to it. So
a lot of things in that
it's
answer that
run the
I could
gamut.
follow up on. Um, the first of which is, you talked about the burnout, and I think pretty much everybody on YouTube hits that point at some point.
5 year
And,
mark is the average
and
mark.
there's a lot of different things that can drive that. Some of it can be, dealing with trolls. Some of it can be, just the overwhelming amount of administrative work that goes into it. But then there's also, I think, especially on a channel like yours, where you're doing a lot of cinematic stuff and putting stories around recipes, where I think there's this self-inflicted pressure to try and one up yourself all the time. Like, okay, that was my best video. How can I do better? And that's, Elton Brown said that's why he quit doing Good Eats, is he felt that the incessant pressure he was putting on himself to always make a better next episode became too much. So, are you going to continue doing some of the story based and, more cinematic type of videos, or are you planning on moving more towards straight cooking show type material?
I do want to do the cinematic stuff, but it won't be as often. My current plan is I'll do maybe like one every 4 episodes or something like that, because I don't have a creative outlet at the moment. Like my professional career moved into management. I got out of like straight coding and stuff, which is kind of leaves that creative thing. So I do need that outlet. Otherwise, I kind of start to go a little stir crazy. But I think kind of going back to the administrative stuff, one thing that that's different about the current age of creating stuff is old school stuff. You had directors, you had camera guys, you had the people who did all the stuff, you had handlers. Now it's like you're everybody. You're the
Yeah.
talent, you're the research, you're the administrative, and that's a lot of stuff to handle. And I even start to see big YouTubers like Mr. Beast. Like you're starting to see like he's hitting that wall of like, what's the next big thing that I can do that's bigger than my last video or my last videos? And it's really kind of unfortunate to see, because it's somebody who has that drive, and like that's all they want to do is just make better videos. And it's like, how do I make this more grandiose than the last one? Um, but yeah, no, it's a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, I do plan on doing it. It's just sitting down and like coming up with a recipe that matches the story, or story that matches the recipe. Um, that's the difficult part.
Now, you had mentioned that you have shifted your diet. Now, I get as the more time goes on, the more trouble I start to have with the word keto, honestly. Because what you described, higher protein, low carb, moderate fat, controlling your calories, that can still be keto. I mean, do you test for ketones?
No, because well, that's the
Okay.
thing is it's one of the things I've always learned is that you also need to have uh, to some degree tracking. Otherwise, you'll never know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I'll go into that in a second. But um, keto is also a good starting point if you don't know where to start, because it eliminates an entire food group, which makes it
Mm.
really simple. But one of the things is, people say like, well, you can't eat more than 20 grams of protein because of this or that. And they've pretty much disproven a lot of that stuff. Um, it's just like the idea of like, oh, you're not losing weight because you need to eat more fat. Like that, you need to eat more fat, more calories. Like there's a lot of bro science around it that's unfounded bro science. Um, but for me, yeah, diet. Like one of the things I've learned in terms of tracking is the amount of fiber I needed to intake daily to just feel good and have like good movements, those sorts of things. And it's on the line of like 35 to 40 grams, which is a lot.
Mm.
Um, but I wouldn't know that unless I tracked it. And that's one of those things which I think a lot of times is lost, especially in keto and that sort of thing, because it's like, oh, high fat, high, eat a lot of meats and very little vegetables and no fruits at all. which fruits are not bad. Like they're not the enemy. Obviously, you need to know how to control it, but tell people I could eat 24, 36 donuts, no questions asked. I can
Mhm.
maybe eat 2 apples. Like you can't eat more than 2 apples. Like it's literally impossible. Um, and then obviously there's all the nutrition and stuff of fruits, and they just behave different. Um, but that's been my shift and my sort of I don't remember what the question was. I keep going off a
The
tangent.
the question was, are you still, I mean, for all you know, you could still be in nutritional ketosis.
I could be, yeah,
It's just one of the issues that I have is this notion that keto is a one size fits all. There's one way to do it. That's why I don't like the term the proper human diet either, because humans are different. All right,
yeah.
we're not identical. We Some of us are more fat adapted than others. Some of us can eat certain things. Some of us can't. I read a book recently called Eat Right for Your Type. It's about blood types and how your blood type dictates a great deal about how you metabolize certain things. So if you're type O, a ketogenic diet is going to work a lot better for you than I forget what it is that Asians are, that AB or something like that. For them, it's like, yeah, rice is in fact a good thing for them. They're just what your blood type is and how your metabolism works and a myriad other factors can dictate what is the proper diet for you. And I don't think there is a specific proper keto diet. I think there's a lot more flexibility to it than some of the zealots would claim.
Yeah, I'm not too read up on the science behind that stuff, but yeah, I mean, just think of it in terms of lactose tolerance. Europeans can tolerate milk,
Yeah.
East Asians just can't. So like just that alone means that our diets are also influenced by our genealogy essentially. So it's like it's really to throw this blanket statement of this is the best. Like, well, if it worked for you, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else. Like, it's a very different thing. I mean, I know people, and I think we've talked about this before, like who are now vegetarian because they couldn't they didn't work well on meat and they love meat. Like they would love to eat a brisket, smoked brisket, but like they just feel like absolute terrible shit afterwards, and they just like look, this it's worked, and like they don't like it, but you know just like people who go eat vegan and then they feel like crap, or they go carnivore and they feel like crap. It's just, it really all depends. Then that's where you have to really kind of be in tune with your body. Because
Yeah. So my attitude is, hey, listen, you want to be ingredient police, you want to be keto police, do it for yourself. I respect that. You need to know what works for you in terms of ingredients, in terms of the quantity of carbs, the amount of fat, the amount of calories, whatever. Absolutely, you should control that for yourself, but don't try and control other people.
yeah, and I think one thing that's worked for me and it can work for a lot of people is not necessarily putting constraints on what you can and can't eat. Like for me, for example, like I can eat anything I want as long as I hit my macros and I stay below my calorie count. Like, oh, you can have a slice of pizza, but you're not eating anything else, and you still have to get your fiber and the rest of your protein. So what are you
Yeah.
going to do? Are you going to cut that slice in half? Are you going to give up the next 3 days of eating carbs? Like, what are you going to do? So it's like, yeah,
Well,
it's having that bank account where you have deposits and uh, debits and stuff. So it's like, how are you going to manage it?
yeah, my attitude is anything can be keto in the right quantity, and anything can be not keto in the wrong quantity.
Yeah, it's
You could, well, unless of course I don't know, maybe if you're just sitting down eating, all your entire diet is wagyu tallow or something like that. But even then, you hit a point, and I'm not making the argument that a calorie is a calorie, because I don't think a calorie of sugar and a calorie of beef are the same thing, in terms of how your body metabolizes it. But there are people in the keto community that I think believe you can consume as many calories as you want, provided your 20 grams of carbs or less. And that's not how it works.
I love that argument. Like you just need to eat more fat. And like I can eat 16 pounds of bacon. I'm not going to lose weight because at the end of the day, people always debate the whole, oh, it's not calories in, calories on. It's physics. You can't deny it. It's the amount of energy expenditure and energy coming into the body. You know, sure, there's some potential health things and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's really in and out. Um, Then you
You
can
know,
kind of talk about the
the
calorie
fortunate
numbers
thing
behind it.
about keto is because of the types of calories you're eating, you're not going to eat 16 pounds of bacon. You're going to be satiated and say, enough is enough. You know, you talked about it with the donuts. You could put a box of Krispy Kreme in front of me, and I'm not stopping until it's empty.
Hmm.
But you know, you
Yeah,
put a ribeye in front of me, and when I'm full, I'm done. I'm satisfied. I stop. I mean, I have a lot more in the way of half-eaten leftovers since going keto than I ever did before because I would keep going. I'm done. I'm done when the food is gone because I
yeah,
was eating, you know, this higher carb, addictive sort of food. And you know, now, like I said, I don't enjoy the feeling of being full anymore. I don't know that I enjoyed it before, but I was willing to push through being full to eat that one last slice of pizza that was still sitting in the tray.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely an interesting thing because on that point, I'm pretty sure I could eat a lot of bacon. Like I
Mm.
don't know, I don't know what my stopping point for bacon would be. It might be 2, 3 pounds, maybe. Who knows? But I feel like that's my eyes deceiving me.
So I'm gonna ask one more question, then I'll let you go because I know you probably have a few as well. You had done a series of 3 videos, I believe, and they're all, I think, Cuban influenced because you are of Cuban descent, and they weren't keto. What was that all about?
So that was I somebody I used to work with sent me this contest on creativity, so public television, for submitting like a cooking show video type thing. So I made a submission on family recipes, and I came in second place. So they wanted uh, 3 additional videos under 2 minutes, kind of representing your family recipe. So that's what I did, which unfortunately is mostly high carb. Um, the chicken's low carb, just avoid the rice. But
Mm,
yeah, that was the funny thing about that is looking at the submissions responses from the judges. There were so many little things that when you're filming, it's like, oh, I did this for comedic effect, but they didn't
mhm.
know that. So it's like I was doing like two what do you call them, cleavers, like just to be funny. Like, yeah, his cutting technique is not great. I'm like, well, it was for comedic effect, but I didn't convey it correctly. Um, but yeah, it was a contest. I won't say I was definitely outside the norm of traditional low carb type stuff.
So what do you get for second place?
I think I got a little bit of. They sent me a camera, some lights to film the additional ones. Which at this point, I have all the lights and cameras that I need, and the money just pretty much went to funding all the food and stuff that I had to film and refilm and those sorts of things. Because like when you're recording, you don't necessarily record in the order that you're doing it because one, things will burn. Two, just pouring something in and you screw something up as you're saying, so you got to do it over again. Those sorts of things. Um, yeah, I think for the pasteles video, I think I did 3, 4 different recordings of making it because it's like some would just come out ugly for some reason or something, or I'd screw something up, or the dough would like fall apart because it took too long. It was too long outside in the while I was doing other things. Yeah, it's the crux of a cooking show.
And we're back.
So, couple questions for you. I know obviously we've talked a lot about cooking shows and stuff.
Mhm.
Do you do you have any plans of doing more like live cooking or like a live cooking live stream type of thing for non uh what do they call them, YouTube
Channel
not
members?
page channel members? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not. Because it's hard enough. You know, I do them for my channel members, the top 2 tiers of my channel members. So I've got 3 tiers. They are line chef, sous chef, and executive chef. And for the top 2 tiers, I try once a month to do a kitchen live stream, and then I try and do one dedicated, just conversational. You know, I can pay attention to everybody's questions and let them lead the conversation. But kitchen ones are tough because you need something that you only need to give about a third of your attention to, because you need to give about a third of your attention to the technology and a third of your attention to the audience who's asking questions and stuff. So you're trying to juggle these 3 balls simultaneously, and I don't do it all that well. I think it's one of those things where if I had a staff and I had someone working cameras, and I had an IT guy or gal, and I had someone who was moderating the chat window. Then I think something like that becomes possible. But I think otherwise it would be too overwhelming. I mean, even when I do them just for channel members, I got to start setting up like 2 hours before I even start to make sure I've got all the tech, working and every camera is working. And I'm going into OBS Studio and making sure, okay, does the mic work on this input? And I'm using, make sure I get the latest download of the firmware for Stream Deck and all of these things. So I can be switching cameras. And it takes the technology aspect of it takes away my attention from the food and from the audience. So it winds up being kind of a half-assed
Hmm.
production all the way around. Fortunately, I think my channel members forgive me for it. It's kind of like seeing behind the curtain. I don't know that
Hmm.
if I put something out like for the general public, if they would be nearly that forgiving.
Yeah, I found that it would require at least two extra people to do correctly. Like you're saying, one to manage the cameras and like switching and whatnot, another person to be sort of a moderator to shout out any sort of questions and stuff and let you focus on just doing the food stuff. Um,
Yeah, what was the one? Was it ice cream that you did live? Or there
uh,
was I'm trying to remember what it was.
there was the Thanksgiving one that I did, and then there was a fudge one that I did. And I had plans for doing more. It's just when I was again going back to since I did them, I knew like, hey, I would need at least one, maybe two people to help me. And then I had so many audio issues. I did the coffee one too with my buddy. Um, it's really weird once you get to that stuff because one person is fine, but once you have two, three mics, it's like you have to do all this special stuff, and then you have to kind of. It's best to route it through two computers, or run it into one, and have that be the output to the other. Like that's what all the big gamers and stuff do. They game on one, output it to another one, and so it gets really complicated. But the fact that we can do that nowadays is really fascinating because that's stuff that
Oh,
used to take hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to have.
well, and, now you've got it on an iPhone app. You can have your Stream Deck on your iPhone, so you can be switching between different cameras. And one of the things I found is, I bring my laptop up into the kitchen when I'm doing these live kitchen live streams, and it's got some sort of a USB allocation limit. So there's only so many cameras you can put onto it before it starts, black screening on you
Hmm.
on various cameras. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Like 3 cameras is the max number of cameras that I can have. And, if you're, moving around the cutting board and then you got to go to the stove top and stuff, it's just like I really wanted 4 cameras, ideally, at
Yeah, then you
least,
got
and just couldn't
an
pull it
actual
off.
video
And
deck.
I kept black screening on my laptop, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So, um, yeah, a lot of tech stuff. I wish I were at a place in my career where I could have a staff and a dedicated studio and not have to be, lugging all of my equipment, upstairs from the man cave to set it up, because obviously, the wife isn't interested in me having filming equipment in the kitchen 24/7.
So, kind of a completely different topic. What's your workout regimen like?
Well, the last few weeks it's been nothing because I tweaked my back, I think, doing squats. It was one of those days where I knew going in, I felt like, boy, I'm not really in the mood to work out, but I'm going to do it. I'll go through the motions. And there are probably some lifts you can do that.
Not squats.
Squats are not one of them. And I wasn't focused on my form and just my lower back. I did something that felt like a shoveling injury, so I was kind of done with that for a couple of weeks, and I just started back up again yesterday. Today I planned on working out, but this is my fourth video I'm recording today. I had like a bunch of stuff. I'm like, okay, maybe I can do all these in sequence because I got the cameras set up in the kitchen, and just rotate the lights around, change shirts, etc. So I didn't get any workout done today. But so what I try and do, I have a workout room with a squat cage or power rack, or whatever you call it. I've got a Bowflex. I've got a bunch of free weights, kettlebells. I've got the, is it X3, like the band system,
Yeah, I
which
forgot what they're called.
I like that a lot. It's I do that as sort of like my first set. I go through and I do, all the compound exercises with that. And, and then I'll move over, and do some free weights. So what I'm looking forward to is once it gets a little bit warmer, I like going out and doing some sprints. And since you had mentioned on, I think it was your comeback video, Couch to 10K, was that the name of the book?
Yeah, so there's a couple different programs. There's a couch to 5K, and then there's like a 5 to 10K, 5 to K to marathon, those sorts of things. The couch to 5K thing really, I mean, it works great, especially if you have no running experience.
So generally, I'm not that into running. I like doing sprints because I like high intensity intervals, and I like strength training. So those are kind of my things. And then usually what I do is when it's warm enough, I'll do the sprints, but then I'll walk for like an hour, partially for the walking, but also because that's the only time I can listen to an audiobook. Back in the day when I used to have a half hour commute each direction to work, that was when I would listen to audiobooks. So now walking is how I do it.
Yeah, the one thing I've come to realize is how important cardio is too, which is kind of why I took up running, because I hate running. Um, but in running, I learned that the reason I hated running was because my cardio sucked, not
Mm.
because I necessarily hated running. Now I just dislike it. I don't hate it. Um, Previous to what I just said. Yeah, it's one of those things because again, going back to like tracking everything you do, like I just kept tracking my heart rate, and like it just kind of kept going up, and I was like, okay, this is not in a good range, regardless of how much strength training I do. Like it's not. I need to get it better, and so that's where I was like, all right, well, there's no excuse to not running. Like you can't be like, oh, I can't run here because there's no place to run. Like you can run pretty much anywhere. Whereas if you're strength training, it's like, wow, there's no gym here that has enough weights for this, or there's no powerlifting gym around here, or this place doesn't have a squat rack, those sorts of things. Um, but there's really no excuse for running, whether you're traveling anywhere or like even if you're in a hotel in the middle of some place that's snowing, they pretty much always have a treadmill or something. Um, but running, yeah, it's been interesting. It's definitely a whole different world too. Do you have hills where you are, or is it as
Oh
flat
yeah.
as can be in Wisconsin?
Oh, there's plenty of hills.
That's a different game altogether. I ran for the first time hills this past 2 weekends ago. That is a very, very different story compared to running on flat ground here in Florida. It's like you just hit a point where like this feels like molasses. Like, am I even moving as you're going uphill?
Oh yeah, it's one of those where I say if you took a picture of me, it would look like I'm running. But if you have a video of me, it looks like,
Are you moving?
like I'm a kid from the 70s imitating the $6 million man. I'm like "Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na," like slow motion running. It's the physical movement of running just at you know 30% speed.
Kind of going back to food. So, what do you have? Any big plans? Any big things you're working on? Any things under wraps that you're not revealing?
So one of the things that I mentioned, and this was in the last live stream that I did with my sous chef and executive chef members, is when I first started doing keto recipes, there was there wasn't tortillas and bread and a lot of things that noodles, the things that keto people crave, and it was sort of a race to be like, who can come up with these first, who can come up with the best tortilla or the best chip or the simulated french fry or burger bun or whatever it is. And I feel like now 4 years later we've accomplished all of those things. there's no there's not much in the way of like gimmicky keto substitutions that haven't been done already. There's something else out there,
Hmm.
something that no one has yet thought of, some weird hack or thing like that. But to me now, I'm more interested in what I call coincidentally keto. It's like, here, this just happens to be a good recipe, or this is a good recipe that just happens to be keto. The ingredients itself make it keto, but I'm not substituting something into this to make it keto. It was just a great recipe by Jacques Pepin or whomever that I looked at and I thought, wow, that's keto right there, or close enough that,
Hmm.
maybe I just get rid of this, one ingredient instead of sugar or honey or whatever, we'll put in a, little squirt of stevia or something like that. But the notion of like completely wholesale changing a recipe to create a burger bun, for example. I mean, bread. You can make artisan bread with 4 ingredients that I used to all the time. It's, water, flour, salt, yeast. That's it. You put that together and it's a great bread. You make an artisan boule, it's delicious and addicting, and you just can't stop eating it. You look at keto breads, a whole lot more ingredients, especially if you want it to resemble a bread. So I want to get away from like the throwing 15 ingredients at something or 20 ingredients at something to make a facsimile of real food when there is plenty of real food that can be made out there that is just coincidentally keto. And so the video we'll release this thing that you and I are doing probably on Monday. What is that, like the 3rd or something? But Friday, the 31st, the video that I'm releasing is poulet à vinaigre. It's chicken thighs in a wine and vinegar sauce.
Hmm.
Amazing. It's not a difficult technique, but it is so gourmet tasting, and it utilizes a piece of meat that if you're buying it at Costco is $1.39 a pound. So I want to get into more stuff where I'm like, hey, guess what? Here's a technique, braising, for example. You can take cheap cuts of meat and just make them just succulent through this technique. And it's not that hard. And it's one of those things where you learn a technique like this, where you start with pan frying and then you basically move it into a shallow braise in the oven, that you could just substitute any number of different ingredients, whether it's different vegetables or different herbs or spices or whatever. And it becomes very versatile. Like, I don't want to teach people how to make recipes. I want to teach people techniques that then it gives them fun in the kitchen. That's what I want to do. And simultaneously be coincidentally keto.
A lot of cooking to me is not so much knowing how to do something, but knowing how to cover the mistakes or the shortcomings that you've encountered. Like, oh, you need potatoes for this dish. I
Mm.
don't have potatoes. Rutabaga. Shoot. How do I substitute this? Well, I guess we're not making a braised stew anymore. We're making fries with something, so that sort of thing. And I think that's really where you elevate the next level of cooking is it's throwing stuff into a pan and knowing how things are going to work. Like to me, you could probably relate to this is when you salt something, do you measure?
No.
Yeah. That to me is like you can look at something and go, that needs more salt. And like there's nothing that explains it. It's just like this intuition from doing things so many times. We're like, yeah, that just needs more salt. And like, how do you know? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's the glistening of the whatever it is or something. I don't know. But and so with that teaching techniques, people don't want to learn techniques. And I know you've encountered this with videos, and I've encountered this with videos. They want to know the cheap hacks or whatever how to do it. So like, how do you package this thing that can teach somebody how to cook a various amounts of things with whatever they have available to them in a way that's entertaining and doesn't set them off from the beginning? Like you're talking about like you start talking like French stuff like poulet, what's I forgot to say vinegar in French, but like that. I remember
Vinegar.
you made yeah you made that video about the chicken and vinegar thing, which I had actually literally that week been looking at a Julia Child's video and recipe and stuff about making vinegar chicken, and I was like, oh, I gotta do this. And then you came out with it, so it's like, oh, great. But most people are gonna say like, oh, that sounds disgusting. I'm not gonna try that. So how do you package that in a way where like, hey, I'm giving you this gift of learning how to cook and make something absolutely delicious with one, a cheap cut of whatever, and two, which is another event circle that we try to cover is you can eat it and it's low carb and fits your diet, but at the same time, everybody else around me, where it's family members, significant others,
Mhm.
can eat it with a bowl of rice or whatever it is they want, and they think it's really good too. So it's like you have all these little things that you're trying to hit of like, how do I teach technique? How do I do a recipe that's low carb but can also be slightly adjusted with a side and it works for somebody who's not low carb? How do I make it so it's simple? That's the other one too, in terms of time, which has been one of the shifts that I've made on my channel. Is like, how do you make something 20, 30 minutes? Because like I don't have time to, potentially braise meats for 12 hours, whatever. That's like that's a weekend thing, and even then it's going to be
Mhm.
difficult. So it's like all these things that come into play, and going back to the fact that there's nothing novel anymore. It's like you have to try and find things that you're basically going back to the roots of cooking is how I see it. It's like what are the classics? What are the old school? Like how do I do this recipe with this technique and I use that technique in something else?
So I'm not sure where the question was in there, so I'll just randomly
I,
make my own answer.
I'm
Um,
rambling.
but I think there's a little bit that you have to weigh in terms of identifying what you want to be as a channel. Are you do you want to try and please everybody? Do you want to try and please the people that want the TikTok hack videos? Or are you willing to go for a slightly more niche but more dedicated audience and be true to yourself? And I think that's where I want to go. And I think you can sell that. I think part of it is your hook, whether that's in your thumbnail, your title, or the first 30 seconds of your video, where you say, I'm going to teach you a gourmet cooking technique. You're going to cook like a gourmet for less than $2 a serving. Here we go. You know, I think to the extent that food prices have really kind of gotten way out of whack in the last couple of years, I think that gives us an avenue to leverage certain cooking techniques, whether that's smoking, braising, roasting, whatever that are considered more classic techniques. They're more about how to be a cook, and that then gives you that sort of inroad into using those techniques in a video, because people are like, well, keto's just too expensive. I can't be going out and buying ribeyes or whatever. And you say, well, guess what? Chicken thighs, bone in, skin on, $1.29 a pound in bulk. You know,
Don't tell
or
anybody about the chicken thighs.
if you want, if you, or you can pay twice that and have someone else remove the skin and bone for you. But you know what you can do? You can remove that skin yourself, throw it in the air fryer, make some wonderful chips. You can pull out the bones, use that, and make your own broth or stock. Why pay more for less food? So start buying some of these cuts and seeing what you can do with them on your own. And yeah, this chicken thing that I filmed tonight was extraordinary. And my wife is not keto, and she loved it. We didn't even have to make rice or noodles or anything to go on the side.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always great when you because I mean, there's so much food out there, and there's so much food that we don't know about, like foods from other countries that we just probably never even try or didn't even find out about, whether it's a rare ingredient type that's local to them
Mhm.
or just a technique. Um, like a lot of Indian food, that's something that I'd really love to do, but it's also if it's not familiar to a lot of people, a lot of times they won't watch it, so they won't pick up those techniques, those sorts of things. Like, what are they making? Like, I don't really, whatever.
Yeah, like the other thing I plan on doing more of is different spice blends that are ethnic. So there are certain things you put together, especially if you freshly grind something, that just create the most explosive, amazing flavor. Anybody that's ever ground their own cumin and just smelt it, there's like no going back then to something in a little McCormick bottle,
I
because
could.
you get those citrusy tones to it, and it's a whole different spice at that point. But yeah, there's that aspect where you wish you could just wave the mortar and pestle or spice grinder under someone's nose, and you'd have them won over.
Yeah. Speaking of kind of spices, have you come across any secret ingredients or just ingredients recently that you can almost apply in a lot of different things and achieve whole new levels of flavor that weren't potentially possible before?
So I've mentioned in a few videos, I'm a big fan of fennel pollen. I
Hmm.
think that is great, especially in Italian dishes. People don't know what it is. They can't quite pick it up. They know there's something there. Fenugreek is another one that I really like. I mean, you get certain Indian sort of notes in there, but also a little bit of maple almost. Sumac, has got that northern African, but also certain fruity tones to it as well. Um, Yeah, I just anytime I discover a new spice, that's thrilling for me. I'm like a child who just got a new toy.
Yeah,
What
and you
about
start
you?
thinking of what to apply to it. Yeah, so for me, it hasn't been as much spices because I've been so busy and stuff. But for me, it's really been butter extract. That has changed everything in terms of making protein shakes, protein snacks, all sorts of stuff because it gives you that flavor that you're looking for a baked good.
Hmm.
Like I had my banana bread protein video, and I've been using it for everything. I've been making peanut butter cookie flavored things like Greek yogurt and stuff, which I need to film. I think just all sorts of stuff, and you're like, wow, that's been the missing flavor in all these things because you can't really use butter in a lot of these things, especially in a cold thing. Because like, okay, you can melt it, let's say, then you put it in,
Hmm.
but now you're gonna have this mouthfeel of really fattiness, and it's cold, so it's probably gonna solidify again. You're gonna have these little chunks of butter, which is
Yeah,
just
unless you've
absolutely
got
disgusting.
some sort of an emulsifier in there.
Yeah. But yeah, no, butter emulsion has been, or butter, is it an emulsion? Yeah, flavor has just been absolutely insane. Um, it just, I keep adding it to things and it just
So what
makes
is
them
it?
better.
It's butter emulsion is what it's called, or what is it?
I think it's just like butter flavoring. I have to try some different butter flavorings to see the difference. Because kind of like
Okay.
banana flavorings, banana flavor is absolutely disgusting, which
Yeah,
apparently,
banana flavor. So I was trying to like write this down just so that I could, order it on Amazon as soon as we get off. Because
yeah,
now that you
I'll
mention it, everyone's going to order it, and the price is going to shoot up.
yeah, just order it through
Yeah,
radio.
banana flavoring. This is, like as I've worked with certain food companies, they're like, "Hey, try out this keto whatever thing," with banana. I'm like, it's just it's going to taste like bad banana candy. Banana
See,
is a really hard one to nail. Cherry is a hard one to nail as well too. Pretty much anything cherry winds up tasting like
grape.
cough syrup. One of the things I want to return to is, as you have switched some of your recipes to be less keto and more low carb or, whatever the recipes that you're doing, have you gotten any blowback in the comments from, either fans or ex fans or anything like that?
Yeah, for the most part, a lot of it is in supportive, but the one that's the only one that I've put out since, which was the banana bread video, banana bread protein shake video, was a lot of like, oh, banana is not low carb, or this is too many carbs. And it was one of those things. Since I recorded it live, I failed to mention how to make it much lower carb, like get a better protein powder, or those sorts of things. But it's one of those things that I expect as I transition of getting a lot of hate. Um, and I honestly haven't really even kept up with comments recently because I've just been so busy. So I'm sure there's some vitriol in there that I just haven't. There's been a few people I've banned, channel banned. Like when they're not constructive criticism, and it's just you can tell that they're just trolling. It's like there's no point. They're just toxic to the community.
Yeah, it's when you do this for a while, you start to learn, who are the people that a polite reply will turn around and get them on your side, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, now I understand." Versus who are the people that are coming just to try and pick a fight.
Yeah, yeah. It's a subtle skill, but like you said, after you do it enough, it's you kind of learn. Kind of like you really have to go with your gut too. When you meet somebody, you go, I don't know, something's wrong with that person. I don't. I got this funny feeling, and that's after like 15 seconds, and you find out later on, like, oh, they were stealing from their grandmother type of thing. Like I knew it. So you kind of have to trust your gut too. It's like a second instinct.
I had a guy the other day. I forget what video it was. Might have been like the bone broth video or something that I did. It's like, you just wasted 12 minutes of my life. And I
You
felt
could
like
have cut him
responding,
off.
"Yeah, what were you gonna do? Like, cure cancer during the 12 minutes? I mean, you had better plans?" It's not like I was holding you hostage. You should have known within the first few minutes that you didn't like this video or didn't like me. You could have clicked stop.
Yeah, those are the best because like, or you could have just skipped to the end and see if you liked the payoff, or like, no one, I did, yeah, I didn't put a gun
There's
to your
there's
head
like
and said
this
sit
little
here and watch.
bar that you can put your mouse on or finger and drag across the screen, to get to the good parts if you don't feel these are the good parts.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
it's
there's to me that's I guess the thing that I have sort of the biggest issue with, and I don't ban these people, but I also don't feel a necessity to respond to them.
engage.
Are the whole entitlement sort of attitude? I want to speak to your manager, type of behavior.
Yeah, I think Joe Rogan put it best. I remember listening to a couple years ago. He goes, I think we can all agree that 1 out of 100 people's are a-holes, like just very 1%. And someone like you who's got over 200,000 subscribers, like that's 2,000 people. That's a lot of a-holes. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna get these comments. You're like, I don't have time for this nonsense.
At one point, I was part of a Lego community, and they can be quite unpleasant as well. Like, if you never say the word Legos, like plural, because there's no such thing, it's Lego elements. You don't play with Legos. Lego is a company name. I'm like, okay, calm down, nerd. Enough.
From one nerd to another.
Yes.
So,
So let's pivot back to your new place, because I feel like I'm still looking at your old place here. When are
yeah,
you going to be moved?
it's
And
been a
and then tell me about the kitchen.
Yeah, it's been a slow transition. We're gonna do a lot of remodeling, or not a lot of remodeling, but some remodeling, and it's a pain in the ass to get a hold of contractors. Just badge them, and they never get back to you, or they get back to you. Like some of the quotes we got, or the one quote we got was just absolute leading. So it's like, all right, well, I guess we're not doing renovations. So I'm much more into the moving process now. My house is a complete mess. I mean, I've been there for an extensive amount of time now, and I've been meaning to record something, and I just haven't. Um, for one thing, like I have some things I need to do. Like the kitchen has these two lights that hang out down right in the middle. It's like unless I'm staying in the middle, like I'm literally like, behind a light. It's kind of funny, but not conducive to filming. Um, so it's just one of those. I have to do minor things and get my ingredients up there because that's the other thing too. Um, and just get used to the oven, the stove top, which is coming from the kitchen that I'm in now. Like I said, I kind of made it so it was made for filming, but like the stove is not as powerful. It's also electric, not gas. The
Hmm.
stovetop is not as powerful. So like certain things that I'll have to really play because I can cook it here, but then like how's it going to cook there and stuff. Um, so long story short, I've been meaning to record something. I just haven't. Like I said, I have a lot of things in the backlog for that I want to film. Um, one which is like a fried rice without rice type of thing, which is an absolutely incredible protein bomb type of dish, which is super simple to make. Um, but making it so that it's one entertaining and two uh, in the right state of mind when I'm filming it is the difficult part. Because again, like I said, I'm working 10, 12-hour days. So it's like, when am I going to film? Because I still have to do things around the house, renovations, other fixes and stuff like that. So hopefully soon. That's the that's the
So
long-winded answer.
once you get settled in, is there a dream appliance or kitchen gadget or cooking tool that's on your list that you absolutely want to get?
That's a good question because at that point, it's funny because people are like, "What do you for the kitchen?" I go, "Man, I have everything because I don't hesitate to like, hey, I'm gonna buy this because I'm gonna do a review on it. Like I even that too. Like I have a knife that I've been reviewing for or working with for like 7, 8 months now because I want to like, hey, here's an actual long-winded test that I, you know, uh, did. Um, Yeah, it's hard to say because like it's like somebody asking you like, Steve, what do you want for your kitchen? Like, I don't, whatever I want and I don't have is probably stupid expensive and nobody can afford type of thing.
Yeah,
It's kind of like,
it's crazy expensive, and I don't have room for it.
yeah, and you're gonna use it once a year, type of thing, if that. Um, like that's the reason I haven't gotten like a barbecue or a smoker or anything like because like one I don't grill enough. It'd just be sitting there getting rusty and stuff. Um, But like, yeah, there's just a couple things I need to get. Like, I'll need to get another fridge because the fridge we have is small. So for two people, like one person, it's small. So two people is going to be even
Mm.
smaller, and for two people, which one has a cooking show, it's not going to be sufficient. So it's going to end up being the like, how many fridges do you have? Fridges and freezers.
So I've got the kitchen one. Then downstairs by my bar, I've got two more, like bigger
Mini
than dorm
fridges.
size fridges. Um, they're bar fridges. One has a freezer in it, but that's where I'll keep like fermented stuff and brines
The
and
smelly stuff.
pickles and stuff like that. And then there's another one where I don't even know what's all in there. I should probably go through and take a look. Then out in our garage, we've got another stand up fridge slash freezer combo. And then I've got a standing freezer. So a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah, that's the and the one thing too is like I said in my last one of my last videos, is like I really want to start getting into hunting and stuff. And if I do that, I'm definitely gonna need a freezer because like where do you put all that meat? It won't fit in my fridge or my freezer.
Well,
Um,
and I would love to, get a full, fridge and just convert it to like a curing fridge, so I could do, salamis and, pepperoni and just, any of the like Italian cured meats where I could have them hanging in a humidity controlled, temperature controlled environment. But it's like I don't even have room for another fridge anyplace. So
yeah, going to thinking about the dream, I just dream about having a studio with a walk-in fridge, a walk-in freezer, like all the space you could ever want. Which again, you're gonna fill up. You're gonna be like, man, I need another fridge. Like
yeah.
just the idea of that, or having like an eight top, like oh, I can cook all sorts of things here. But at that point, it also turns into uh, not realistic because nobody has that. So it's like I can't cook six different things at the same time because I have four burners of which two are high output. The other are like I can't even roast a marshmallow on it. So
Yeah, it starts being like that line in Wall Street when Bud asks Gordon Gecko, "How many yachts can you water ski behind?" You know, at what point is it just you've got more than you need?
yeah, but we can dream. You know. Um,
So before we wrap this up, if there's any other topics you wanted to cover, I'll here's your shot.
yeah, no, I think that's it. I mean, we've been talking for a while, so we covered a lot of ground.
Well, I'm excited to see what happens in your new kitchen. I'm excited just to see it, for starters. But I know from personal experience how difficult it is juggling life and what we do. I was going to say art, but that's giving it too much credit, perhaps.
Yeah, not an
Um,
artist.
but I know that when you have a period of time off that's not necessarily of your choosing, that getting back and having that creative outlet feels pretty great. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And I think with that, we're gonna close this out. Do you have like you don't have a thanks for watching sort of deal?
No, I just had it
Yeah.
fade to black.
Say and then he ends because
Ouch.
ants. Thanks for watching.